Visa requirements for business travellers from Indonesia are set to be eased following President Joko Widodo's bilateral talks with Anthony Albanese earlier this week. Stringent measures still apply for holidaymakers, however. Joining me live is Margy Osmond, Tourism and Transport Forum Chief Executive. Thanks for your time. So there's a lot of crowing from the Labor government. We've changed the visas, but if you're a tourist, you've still got this very cumbersome process if you're from Indonesia. There are 70 other countries they can go to without doing that at all. What did you make of this?
Well, look, afternoon, Tom. I think it's great news that we're seeing some movement in the visa situation with Indonesia, even if in the first instance it's lifting 3 to 5 years and potentially for frequent travellers lifting the visa requirement 10 for the business people travelling. But from a tourism perspective, Indonesia is one of those countries with an enormous growing and increasingly affluent young group of potential travellers who are very keen to come to Australia. So I suppose our most optimistic view of this would be, well done, glad to see it happen. But now how do you apply the same process to getting a better outcome for the tourists and encouraging those young Indonesians to come to Australia?
So is that something you'll sort of advocate for? I mean, we've got so many Aussies going to Bali. It's mostly one-way traffic, isn't it?
Well, it is mostly one-way traffic. And to be honest, the best way of upping the aviation capacity is to see a stronger two-way traffic between the two countries. So we'd obviously be very keen to see that happen. But also relieving some of the burden of the visa process on countries like Indonesia sends a wider message to other potential travellers. I think we've got to be realistic, as I know Tourism Australia and others are being now, that our biggest potential audiences are places like India and Indonesia. And within the bounds of security and appropriateness, we've just got to make this a whole heap easier because everybody else is.
Well, exactly. As I said, you mentioned India. Indonesians can travel there. They can go to Japan, 70 countries. They don't have to go through that cumbersome process. Hey, there will be a boost for tourism. The FIFA World Cup, the Women's World Cup coming to Australia. Do you have any sort of marker yet on how big this will be, how many people you're expecting, indications from hotels and so on?
Oh, yes. Look, there's no doubt that FIFA is going to be a wonderful bonanza, not just for sports fans. From the tourism industry's perspective, it's great news. We're looking at something like 1.5 million tickets being sold for this, and something like 500,000 of those tickets will in fact be to internationals. But I think the other big benefit of this is from Australia and New Zealand's perspective, it'll be playing out over 9 cities around the country and in New Zealand. And in addition to that, there'll be something like 1 billion people watching it on TV and seeing just how gorgeous it is here and in NZ and why they should come down under in a hurry.
That's always the double whammy, isn't it? The advertisement. What we don't want is countless stories about flight cancellations and delays. Is that going to be what ends up going around the world as well?
Well, I certainly hope not. But I think the other thing that lots of Australians need to understand is that, weather's changing and we have weather problems. And as a consequence, things like wind at Sydney Airport is something that you can't control. And you are going to have implications from that. But it would be wrong to think that that's only happening here in Australia. The same sort of issues are being encountered by major airports all over the world. So while I certainly hope that isn't an outcome when the FIFA World Cup is on, it is something that I think we all have to come to grips with in this changing weather environment.
Yeah, well, it can't be perfect. I guess the concern has been recently losing a lot of stuff. Maybe they've all got their winter colds out of the way. I'm on about cold 5 out of 5 weeks, so I'm hoping it ends at some point and they'll be fit and healthy. They will have had everything by the time the World Cup starts.
Well, look, that's true. But I think from a staffing point of view, it was never a problem that was going to be solved overnight. And I think you've still got to look at outside of the aviation space into the hospitality sector, where, even in the major cities now, it's still rare to find some restaurants that are open every day of the week and open for lunch every day. It just doesn't happen because they haven't got the staff to make it occur. So it's a long-term problem to fix. And there's a PR issue here too, which is convincing people, once again, that tourism, hospitality, aviation, whatever else it might be that's linked to the tourism industry is a great place to work. And of course it is.
I'm trying to remember the name of the tourism kangaroo. I want to say Ruby. We've got to check up on...
Ruby Roo. Ruby's fabulous.
Ruby
we love
Roo.
Ruby. Yeah, and she's big in China.
How do you get metrics on Ruby? Is there sort of polling afterwards? Do you get a cue card recognition? Is it just number of travellers arriving? How do we check if Ruby's delivering?
Well, I have to say, Tourism Australia, who are responsible for the campaign, would have very sophisticated metrics in measuring every time they run that ad and how many bookings or inquiries or whatever else they get. It's quite a sophisticated campaign. It's a very clever campaign, and it's designed to be in play for, an extended period. And because Australia owns Ruby the Roo, we have, the capacity to make that a long-running campaign. So I am sure that Tourism Australia will have great news to report over the next half year as that campaign really bites overseas. But be assured they'll be watching it with, an eagle eye.
Good to know. Margy, Osmond, thank you.
My pleasure, Tom. Take care.